had you made the call, had you done this investigation, you'd have found out that this house had been treated several times for subterranean termites.
This is the PMP Industry Insider Podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome out to another episode of the PMP Industry Insider Podcast, where we look at what is changing in the industry and we take you to the front lines to those that are driving those changes. As always, I'm Donnie, Shelton, owner of Triangle Home Services, which has Triangle Pest as well as Triangle Lawn. And with me is the omnipresent, ever-present, omniscient. Is that? I don't even. I'm using words I don't even understand now. I don't even know.
I don't even think that's a word. But
omnipotent,
but keep going.
omniscient.
Omnipotent is a word.
Omniscient is as well. So anyway.
It is.
By the way,
right.
Big voice Dan Gordon. Dan, would you like to say hello? Also talk about our sponsor, our guest, and our topic.
Sure. So we are going to. So let's talk about our sponsor first, so I don't forget that. So our sponsor is Coalmarch by WorkWave. If you want to find out more about digital marketing or any of the services that they offer, go to coalmarch.com and you can have a look there. And as promised, we are bringing back my friend, colleague, and a guy that I probably work more with than anybody else, Mark Ruff, who is an attorney in Florida. And I closed the Word document with your whole profile, so I can't read it, but let me do it by memory. Mark represents lots of folks for in wood destroying.
Hang on.
Wood destroying realm.
Hang on.
Go ahead.
Ladies and gentlemen, let me just take over here. I gave Dan a simple task, which was to introduce our guest, and he
perfect.
failed.
Let's go.
I have his. Mark. I'm going to give you.
Yeah, why don't you read it? Because I read it the last time. It's about time that you start pulling your weight around here. So let's go.
All right. So Mark Ruff is an attorney who's been representing the needs of Florida pest control operators for over many years. He represents dozens of pest control companies and has significant experience representing pest control companies in a number of areas, including defense of claims involving chemical exposure, wood destroy organism insect reports, which are my favorite, repair and retreatment contracts, non-compete agreements, corporate mergers and acquisitions, and more. Mark currently serves as counsel for the Florida Pest Management Association, as an advisor to the Certified Pest Control Operators Association of Florida, and as a member of the Fumigation Advisory Council's Board of Directors. Mark, welcome. That's the proper introduction there.
That was awesome. I think I read that last week or on the last episode. But let's talk about what. So we wanted to continue this discussion because it's fascinating to me, and I think to everybody who does inspections. But we could talk about how to do a proper inspection, but let's talk about how to protect yourself legally when you're doing this inspection. And I just want to say that most of what Mark's going to talk about relates to Florida, but Florida has some of the most stringent rules in the country in place. So if you pattern your program after some of the concepts we talk about, I think that you will be in best in class. I don't want to say you'll be in compliance in your state, but you will be best in class, and you should check out your own state. But with that, why don't we dig in?
All right.
By the way, hello, Mark.
Hi, guys. All right. So I thought what we would focus today on is what we consider to be the pre-purchase inspection in Florida. It's called a 13645 inspection. Probably one of the hotbed areas for litigation that a pest control company who conducts these inspections would face. In Florida, the inspection is only used if you're going to refinance a property or if the property is going to be purchased. Now, the 13645 inspection in Florida is different than the NPMA 33. And in Florida, even though a lot of lenders want to see the NPMA 33 form used, in Florida, you must use the 13645 in addition. So if the lender wants the NPMA 33 in Florida, you also have to give them the 13645 form. Always.
We have a similar structure here in North Carolina. We call them WDIRs here, and we have the same protocol, which is the state has their own form. That's what you will use regardless whenever you do one. And if someone wants an MPMA 33, that has to be in addition to, you can't supplant that. So I would imagine most of our listeners just check with your state to make sure you know what's legal in your state.
Correct. Now, in the reason that we face a lot of litigation of this form, and I've probably over my career handled well over 200 of these cases. What we find out is a lack of training. What happens is a lot of times in the litigation, what you'll find is the technician will say, well, I rode around the truck for 3 weeks and watched, my certified operator or another technician conduct these inspections. Because they don't know where to get the information. And a lot of the information that you get, at least here in Florida, is on the Department of Agriculture's website, Chapter 42. There are baseline practices the department puts out. In many states, I've seen it as well. The Department of Agriculture will put out guidelines on how to conduct the inspection and or even fill out the form itself. And a lot of these documents somehow never make it into the training folders for these technicians. So to me, that's where a lot of the issues start is, was the individual trained? The other thing that I see a lot of is that the technician gets a route sheet, and that route sheet has 10 stops a day on it. Now, how can a technician do 10 stops a day on 10 different homes? And in litigation, the question is always asked of the technician, well, how long does it take you to inspect a 2,500 square foot house? And the correct answer is always as long as it takes, right? As long as it takes. If the technician that screws himself is the guy that turns around and says, well, I can do it in 45 minutes. Well,
Right.
45 times 10, you've already run out of your 8 hours. So,
Correct. Yeah.
But again, that's a training issue.
Hang on. So I got to stop you there because there's a lot of good meat that you just went over there, and I just want to summarize it for our listeners. So the first thing is go to your state's website and see if there's any training concerning these forms and these inspections. If there is, make sure that's in your training program. That's the first thing I heard. Okay. Because then it's like, now you can tie it back to, hey, there's a WDR in your case. I forget, you guys call them a 13645 or whatever, okay. So yes, there's training and we're using what the Department of Ag has. So that's number one. Number two is train your technicians. If they ever get questions about stuff like it's as long as it's a fantastic answer, because you're right. If they say, well, I can do it in an hour, or hell, you got someone who's like, oh, I can do that in 20 minutes. It's like, now we got bigger issues. So that's a fantastic point, by the way. So keep going. Sorry, I just want to interrupt there.
No, that's okay. So, the form itself, I mean, the form itself is critical on the fill out. A technician can go through and inspect a home, and the standard in Florida, as well as many states that I've seen, is what's visible and accessible at the time of the inspection. That's the critical key. What could I see and what was accessible? And there's also kind of a unique anomaly because there's a lot of home inspection companies who are conducting these types of inspections. Well, in Florida, if you look at what our standard is, most of our technicians, our inspection is done from the ground. We don't have to go up on the roof. We don't have to go look at dormers. We're ground people. Whereas a home inspector goes up on the roof and they're walking around. So the standard is a little different for a home inspection company that also performs 13645, because now they have to look at the chimney. Now they have to look at the dormer, because they've now taken themselves out of, the realm of just being a pest control operator conducting the inspection, because they place themselves into that category. But I think when I get a case in, when I get a 13645 case in, the case that scares me the most is the one where I look at the form and it says, I didn't see nothing, and then they sign the bottom of it and it's out. Mm-hmm. That to me is the scariest case, because I don't know what the individual saw. And even the slightest amount of damages has to be reported. So for them, especially when I look at the age of the house, you got a house that's in the 60s and you got a clean report, I'm already questioning, what happened? How long did it take you to do it? What did you see? How did you conduct your inspection? And that's where it starts. But when I look at the form, itself, I look at it to say, okay, how did you fill this form out? Did you really check all the boxes here? Did you see live activity? Did you see evidence of wood destroying organisms? And yes or no? And if you did see it, what did you see? And where did you see it at? Florida has a section that was changed years ago, and it's section 3 of the form. And what happened was so many pest control companies were just relying on what was visible and accessible that they didn't really inform the consumer on what they couldn't inspect or what they didn't inspect. And in Florida, we have section 3, which talks about the attic, the interior, the exterior, the crawl space, or other areas. And that section of the form is designed to put the consumer on notice of what I didn't inspect and why. So for example, in the attic, I couldn't inspect the truss tails because of low overhang. I couldn't inspect the entire attic because of blown in insulation. I couldn't plod through the insulation. A lot of times pest control companies will leave that blank or will have some written in language in there that they copied from inspection to inspection to inspection that may or may not even be applicable to that property. So that section 3 is critical because it puts the consumer on notice on what didn't get inspected.
So I want to pause you there real quick because what you just said is an important point. By the way, just a disclaimer for our listeners: we don't do these anymore. Okay. Many years ago, I heard a stat, and I don't know if you've heard this or not, Mark, and maybe you've heard it, Dan, but I heard it many years ago, and I just looked at the ROI on it, and I'm like, why are we doing these? I heard that like 85% of lawsuits in pest control came from these inspections. And when I looked at my little $85 inspection that I would get from this versus, opening myself up, increasing the rate or the odds 85%, I'm like, these things aren't worth. By the way, and they were a pain to work with. I mean, the realtors are working with, and then when do we get paid? And just like all the crap that goes, I'm just like, you know what? For what we're doing, not
one of
worth
the other
it.
things that
I'm done with it.
We when we used to do them, and this is many years ago, the amount of renewals that we would get on it was so low just because people didn't put the importance in it that they did in a treatment itself. Well, so we quit doing them in New Jersey as well.
So that's my disclaimer is that, so basically what I'm telling you is everything I say from now on at least comes out of my mouth. You probably shouldn't listen to me, right? Because I'm not up to speed on it, but I will say that.
But Mark, I'm looking at this PowerPoint here and you've got definition of a structure, and I know I'm jumping around. One of the definitions is a railroad car, a motor vehicle, a trailer, barge. But when did those guys get WDIs or WDOs?
Well, that's a good point. And if you look at the form in Florida, you're required to state on the front of the agreement what structure you inspected. And what that is that's a limiting section. Okay, for example, in Marion County, where we have big horse area, you see these big houses that have a house, a separate garage, and a barn. Well, if I would go out to do an inspection and I don't limit myself to the house or the barn or whatever, then it's anticipated that I inspected all 3 structures. So in Florida, that it's key that you write down exactly what you are inspecting, because
if I live on a lake and I have a boat at my dock, right, if I don't limit it, that boat is
well, and that's I was going to say, and that's the key part. I mean,
that's interesting.
Again, it's been a long time since we've done these, but I agree with you. One of the things that we did back when we did do these is we had standard exclusions that we would automatically put on the forms, and then we would take them off. Like we basically would write out the entire house. By the way, I'm not telling anyone to do this. I'm just, because I'm kind of jumping back a little bit to what Mark was talking about, is like really defining where you're inspecting and where you're not, and being explicit in saying, I was not in the attic. if you don't go in the attic. I didn't go here and just so that we would remember, because sometimes you know how it is, you're out doing a route and that was just second stop of the day and you took some notes, but you didn't complete the form right then. And then you get at the end of the day and it's like, no, I got to put that back together. It's really easy to lose that kind of stuff. And so anyway, defining the structure, making sure that you are very explicit about the areas that you did not inspect, I think is really, really important. So continue on. So,
Absolutely. So another important part of the inspection is identifying whether the house had a history of treatment. And the form, at least in Florida, we are required to inspect to find out if there's evidence of treatment. And in Florida, looking for the prior treatment stickers is critical. And in Florida, there's 5 different areas typically where a company would stick affix a treatment sticker, mostly on the power panel, but you've seen them on air conditioners, hot water heaters underneath the cabinets in the kitchen. You've seen them in crawl spaces, and you see them in attic accesses. So you got to be trained to look for these stickers. Now you may not see the treatment, you may not always see drill holes, but those stickers will tell you what that is, and that's kind of a key defense for a pest control company. Because in the deposition with the homeowner, you're going to go through the form and you're going to say, "Did you read the form?" "Yes, I did." Okay, now there's this one section here that said that there was multiple treatment stickers found in the on the power panel. What did you do when you read that? "Well, I didn't do anything." "You mean you didn't call those companies to find out what the history of the service was?" I'll get it. I'll depose those records, and sometimes I'll just take them and I'll just put them right in front of them. Had you made the call, had you done this investigation, you'd have found out that this house had been treated several times for subterranean termites. So that's a key defense issue that we like to develop all the time to make sure that evidence of the treatment. And a lot of times in Florida, we have kind of a expansive definition of what a treatment is. The inspection sticker. If you have monitoring stations around, maybe those small monitoring stations where a little flag pops up if there was been termite activity. There may not be any termite bait in those stations, but it's still evidence of prior treatment that needs to be listed. Obviously, a baiting system is one of those as well, and it's really important to make sure, because that puts the buyer on notice that there's a history there that needs to be investigated prior to purchasing the home.
So you said something really, really interesting about calling the prior company. All of a sudden, that makes this a research project. And how much do you charge for this thing? Is it really worth doing these things? I mean, that to me sounds like you're opening up a can of worms.
Well, I don't want to get in a position where I'm telling companies what they should charge for their,
Right.
For their systems. But there is liability here. But let's look at the flip side of that for a moment, okay?
Mhm.
If you do these inspections well, okay, and like Donnie had said, people are going to make mistakes. Things are going to happen. But if you do these inspections well, and you're well trained and you're fixed to do this, and you're going to spend the time and you're going to train and document it, what greater way to start a relationship with somebody who's just moved into the state, who's just bought a house? You know what? You are the man. What a lead that you get, because the biggest investment somebody's ever had. You've told them about it. You've told them all you can. Do you think they're not going to take your GHP and L&O service? Come on.
Yeah, but they're not going to buy the house. So,
well, I mean, that's true.
I will say this, and this are just like some things to think about. I know for at least when we used to do these, I went into this thinking, man, we're just going to get so much, so many renewals. We're going to get so much business off of it. And, a lot of times the buyer would not even be there when I was doing the inspection. And by the way, I know there's folks out there that are doing this successfully, and it's a business strategy.
Very successfully. Yeah.
Yeah. We could not, for us, at least, we could not seem to get any traction there. But you're right. I mean, yes, it could absolutely be something that could be a lead generator, but like most things, I would be very careful in just making sure that you cover your bases if that's the route you're going to go. So,
Well, I think that, I think it has to be looked at on a case by case basis, and how your marketing follows up on that inspection. But, I always thought that it was I like the inspection. I think it can be done if it's trained properly, and it's not, if your people are not, if I get my route sheet done by the end of the day, I can knock off at 2. So you're just blowing through these things as fast as you can. I mean,
Right.
if you have technicians that have that mindset, I think that you're opening yourself up. But if you're, you can develop a strategy where, people are doing a good job and doing it well to the best of their ability. I think it could be a good component to your business. But anyway,
So
that's
can you
Mark.
confirm nor deny my stat that I came up with, like legit that I heard, like that, I don't know if anyone actually collects data on this, but that, that this is really one of the hotbed when it comes to liability and it comes to, lawsuits, that these inspections are by far the number one, they're the number one reason, or the number one reason that people get sued in our industry.
I think, well, based on my stats, it seems like the contract issues are outweighing the 13645. But I will tell you that in my clients who are buying insurance, on the application for insurance, the insurance companies are sticklers about, how many of these you do a year, and what your revenue is from this, and then your premium is changed based on that. And I will tell
Right.
you that in talking with a lot of the insurance companies, the underwriters, it is an inspection that's going to drive your premium up.
Gotcha. So let's talk about
So,
liability with these things. I
Yeah.
know there's 2 types, and so let's roll into those and kind of what you're really getting yourself on the hook for. If this is a business strategy for you and you decide to go down this road.
all right. So in the 13645 realm, the liability is twofold. One is from a regulatory standpoint, and the second one is from a legal standpoint. The regulatory standpoint, you're dealing with the Department of Agriculture. A consumer complaint is filed against the company for an inadequate inspection. The Department of Agriculture will send out an inspector who will take a look around and develop, whatever their facts are on the situation, take photographs, send it to the enforcement section, and the enforcement section is going to review the facts and make a determination as to whether a complaint should be lodged against the company. Companies served with that complaint, and then they've got 20 days to respond to the complaint and make a choice on whether they want to do a formal or informal hearing with the Department of Agriculture on whether that inspection was done correctly or not. A lot of times that the formal hearing is similar to a normal civil hearing, where an administrative judge hears the case by the department and hears the case by the pest control company and makes a determination whether there was whether it was compliance or not. Now, in the civil or in the informal hearing is really used just to essentially, you're admitting that, whatever the fault was occurred, and you're either going to fall on your sword and ask them for a reduction in the fine, or in the event that there's an issue of law that you want to bring up, you can argue it at an informal hearing. So that's how the regulatory side goes. The regulatory side has a fine component. You could get a warning letter, depending on how many violations you had. You get a monetary fine as well. On the legal side,
Well, before you move
those,
on to that, and sometimes people look at these and are like, well, the fines aren't that big and it's not that. Well, just don't forget, they can yank your license, right? I mean, that's like, to me, that's a huge risk, right? You want to make sure that, and I'm sure all of our listeners, I mean, if someone's taking the time to listen to a podcast, I mean, in their industry, normally they're going to be pretty tight operators, but just don't forget that, right? I mean, it is a big deal. Like, it's not, it's not a small thing.
and you have to remember, under our statute, you could be fined up to $5,000, and you can actually be charged with a second-degree misdemeanor. So, I mean, but you're looking at, like a drive-by WDO, guy never got out of his truck,
Right.
committed
Right.
fraud in doing. That's when you're looking at this. I mean, people sometimes make mistakes, but in this industry, it just seems that either they don't know how to accurately do the inspection, or they don't know how to accurately fill out the form. And I see that a lot. I see they know how to do the inspection, but they can't fill the form out correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like you did half of it correct. How come you didn't fill the form out
Right.
the way it's supposed to be? Because obviously you had all the information in your notes, it just never made it over to the form, and it's an inaccurate 13645.
Right.
So
Right.
one of the slides that you have in this PowerPoint, you've got a picture of a door with a little bit of termite damage in the door jamb, and it says if you miss damage as small as something on a door frame, you could end up buying the house. How does that happen?
All right, so we see that a lot. When you look at a civil complaint, they always throw in that one little line. It says, had the report been adequately, had the inspection been adequately completed, it would have put the plaintiff on notice that the house had a history, and they would have never purchased the home.
Right.
So now it's trying to recover from a bad purchase. And it could be a situation where they really wanted the house, or they were in a hurry to buy the home. And, once they got into it, they realized that, I got to put a bunch of money into this home to fix it up. Well, I don't want it anymore. So let's make the pest control company buy it back. And
Wow.
if you look at the damages, I mean, the damages that they recover, and I think that's really important, because I think a lot of pest control companies think that if you my liability for an inadequate inspection is simply I got to fix whatever they're talking about, whatever the damages are. But it's really not. If you stop and think about it, it's you could have a diminution in value to the property, right? And if you stop and think about that, think about it when you go to buy something. Wouldn't you argue the defect in whatever you're buying to reduce the price? Well, that's essentially what
Absolutely.
that
Right.
diminution value. You've got a history of termite damage. I'm not going to pay you what you want, because I'm taking a risk here. You stop and think about it. If the damages are severe enough that they can't live in the house, well, you got to put them up in a hotel. You got to feed them. So now you've got relocation damages. If they have to take part of the roof off, you got to move furniture. You got to store furniture. So the damages, they add up a lot. Plus the fact that some of these cases, they even are looking for prejudgment interest, which is interest on the monies they had to spend to repair the property. And sometimes that prejudgment interest can be can be a lot of money. I mean, and a lot of lawyers look at that when they're assessing the liability, that the interest on their claiming on the damages is significant in and of itself.
Interesting. So, all right. So I've got risk on the regulatory side. I've got risk on kind of the civil side. What are some things that I can do? We've talked about training, and in our last episode, we talked about a few things as far as contracts, but obviously this is a little different because this is using a standardized form. There's training on that form. What else can I do to protect myself if this is a strategy that I want to do as an owner?
Well, I think again, it starts with the training. It starts with making sure that the individuals that you are hiring to do these types of inspections are dedicated to doing them correctly, choosing the correct people that are going to represent you and your company in these inspections. To me, that would be having that set of people whose mindset is in this. That's really where it starts. The training comes from experience. I mean, when you look at the different types of structures, whether the slab is a supported slab, whether it's a monolithic slab, teaching those points and having those people with that type of construction knowledge. And there's a lot of experience that comes with this. I learn a lot going out with the experts. When every time I get one of these cases, I go out with the expert. I always bring the owner of the company with me and in addition to the technician. And we go through the house, and I learned things like, okay, if you want to find the slab level, measure down from the floor from the window jamb. I went, wow, that's pretty cool. I wouldn't know
Right.
to have done that, and
Right.
so you look for these things, trying to get up into the attic, trying to figure out how to get out to those truss tails, how to fill the form out correctly. When you're going through in all these cases and learning these things, I learned this over time, and you're not gonna. I just don't feel myself that you can teach that in 3 weeks to a technician.
No.
There's so much finesse to this that, like I said, I think the thing for a pest control company is to have a dedicated individual who has the experience to look for these things and identify it. And the thing about it too is that there's a push me pull me here, because a lot of these leads are generated from relationships with realtors.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The realtors are the ones that are calling you up. And the thing is that I think a pest control company needs to learn that some of these referrals are, what the realtor has an interest in closing the
deal.
closing the deal quickly as possible.
Yep.
And if, they don't want to see problems on those forms, because they know if they see problems, then the deal's probably not going to go through.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting, because sometimes I'll talk to a PCO who's doing these inspections, and I'll say, well, what happened to you? Why didn't you do this? Or why didn't you do a follow-up inspection? Or why didn't you do this? And they'll tell you that there's pressure from the realtors to close, and that some of these realtors are giving them, 60-70% of the referrals, and they don't want to let them go. I will tell you that I have deposed more than my share of realtors. And if you ask the realtor, didn't you tell so-and-so that, not to worry about doing a follow-up inspection, that the report was fine? No, I didn't.
Oh, no.
As a matter of fact, I told them that I wanted a full and legal and complete
Mm-hmm.
inspection. I need to protect I need to protect my client. Yeah. Oh yeah. I have never seen a realtor come to the aid of a pest control operator when they're the impetus of the problem. So
There's one
here's
more.
one of the interesting things on the slide here is personal liability. Just because you work for a big company doesn't mean you personally can't get sued as the inspector.
absolutely.
Tell me about that.
Well, and that's something that a lot of technicians don't understand. They think that they work for some big company, and that if I do something wrong, that company is going to get that insurance company is going to cover me. A lot of times these folks won't name the technician, and they feel that, hey, look, I got the company. The company's responsible for the technician under respondent superior. So who cares? But in reality, stop and think about it. If an insurance company, and there's lawyers out there that if you look at the big PI lawyers out there, they tell you that insurance companies, they don't want to pay claims. They want to pay as little as they can. They look for loopholes here, not to have to cover. Well, in some cases that's true, I guess. But if I'm a technician, and let's say I work for a smaller company, and I got a $200,000 loss, and the insurance company is not going to cover it because of some defect in the insurance. Who are they going to go after for the money, right? The company goes bankrupt. There's no money. Well, let's go after the technician, right? So we'll name the technician. And I always ask in training, when I give these trainings, I ask a technician or the certified operator, based on the money you make, how long does it take you to pay off a $200,000 judgment? That's like buying a house, guys. So you have personal liability for that, and they have to understand that not all the time insurance is not always there.
So there's one thing I want to talk about, because I'm looking through this presentation, which is fantastic, by the way, and it reminded me of something that happened many, many years ago when I first started. So we used to do these, and I had a guy that worked for me. He was our termite guy. fantastic. I mean, a really good termite guy. Back then, we did only full drill out termidor treatments. That's all we would do. He did them all. I mean, obviously, he had helpers and those types of things, but had been with me for 5 years, fully trusted him, seen him take care of some really complicated jobs in some homes. And one day I'm sitting in my office and I get a phone call. It's like, hey, you guys did a WDR on my home. And I've just had another company in, and they said there's a ton of termite damage under the house. And you guys signed it off as being clean. So I pull the WDR, I look at it. Sure enough, I'm not going to say the person's actual name. He had been out there. He's the one that did the WDIR. I'm like, okay, that's fine. I'll come out and take a look. I go out and look at the house, and it was legit. Like, there was one of the floor joists, about a 4-foot section, was just, mud tubes all over it. It had been, I don't know how he missed it. I do know how he missed it. It's because it was in an uncommon. Normally here in North Carolina, we got crawl spaces. It's go to the garage. Where's the garage at in the crawl space? Go to where the windows are at, because you normally the water coming in under that. And then go to the porch, because if it's a dirt field, those are just common areas you're always going to find termites in if there's termites in the house. This section that had damage was in the middle of the crawl space, which is not anywhere near where you would expect to see termites. So he just missed it. So I immediately came out of the crawl space. I went up to the homeowner. I said, look, you're right, and we're going to replace it. We're going to fix it. And so I tell that story, and it didn't go anywhere. We fixed it. Obviously I didn't want to pay for it, but that's what I did. We took care of it. I guess my point here is, and these kind of relate back to your slide, is number one, if someone makes a complaint, get in front of it immediately. 9 times out of 10. Yeah. 9 times out of 10, if you jump in and like, hey, I'm really sorry. And if it truly is your fault, like, take care of it, right? Just go ahead, because it's going to be, because it's like most things, right? If you don't take care of it and you start throwing excuses and it's not really this, not really that, and then people get pissed off and it gets personal, now you're going to have a fight, right? So just like, don't lock horns with people, like, especially if you go in there and you're like, yeah, this is even close. Or let's just say it's not really, you can't really tell if it was you or not, but you could knock it out for $100 or even a little bit less. And in this case, what we did, we just put another piece across of it, and the homeowner was happy with that. We told him what we're going to do, and it was over, right? It was complete, but that could have easily turned into something, a really big deal, had it been like, well, that's been afterwards, and now the homeowner's pissed off, and now they're looking.
If you can get in front of it, yeah, if you can get in front of it, then you're not going to the internet and seeing these these attorneys who make a fantastic living off of suing pest control guys. Although you can't stop that, you really can't.
Well, while I agree with your comment about getting in front of it, the danger with that, though, is that you have to understand what the scope of the damages are.
Yes,
because if you don't understand what the scope of the damages are, and I have seen that in several instances where, we thought that the damage was the company says, look, I'm not going to turn it into my insurance carrier. I'm going to pay for it myself. And first thing out of my mouth is, make sure you understand what the scope is and make sure you get a release after you pay for it.
Yep.
And when he started taking off the garage door to fix the garage door, as they started pulling out siding, it ended up being the whole west end of the house.
Oh my gosh.
So you get into a situation where you sometimes you can, yes, I can fix it, or I can pay somebody to fix it. And by the way, that's my preference, is write a check rather than, have your handyman go out there and fix it, because now you become responsible for your handyman's repair.
Correct.
And I'd rather just hand you a check.
And then you take care of it.
But there's a risk here. And the risk is, if I'm going to try to get in front of it and take care of it, do I really understand what the damages are? And is it a situation where I need to turn this into my carrier?
Yeah. The core point here is that become an advocate with, if it truly is something that you're involved in. A lot of times, if you don't get on the opposite side of the table and you're kind of working together, it goes way better, and it never gets to this point, right? Normally, Dan and I, years ago, we were in a group, and there was one guy in there that seemed like all of his time was in lawsuits because he was never wrong. Dan's smiling and laughing. If you're watching this on YouTube, because he knows who I'm talking about. Like, we would come in and we would be talking about our businesses, and he would spend all of his time talking about his lawsuits, because he could not be wrong, right? He could not accept the fact that, well, sometimes maybe something's not my fault, but I just have to, that's just part of doing business. And so I want to make that point, because don't roll over, but at the same time, it's like, you have to go big picture and say, is this really worth it? You know what I mean?
So
Like
from a professional, from a lawyer's perspective, and answer it from a lawyer's perspective, is there any time you would not report it to your insurance company and just kind of take care of it, or should you report it to your insurance company just because it can turn into something bigger?
Okay, so so
say no more.
All right. So lawyer Mark is going to say, yes, each and every time you have a claim, you must turn it into your carrier because you have a cooperation clause in your insurance policy, and you cannot settle a claim without their permission.
Yes.
Okay, but businessman Mark says, well, I think it's a case by case basis. Again, wrap your arms around it, see what you have, make sure if it's just a door jam and you can get a release on it, then that's probably the way to go as opposed to turning it into your carrier. But you've got to make that analysis. You just can't go into it blindly and say, look,
right,
we're just going to do this. You've got to look at it and say, I have a problem here. I need to turn this into my carrier.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a fantastic point. All right. We're getting close to the end here. So let's just wrap up. Just real quick, I'm going back through this. And by the way, for our listeners, I mean, we can't share this training, and we're not going to, and we're just trying to cover it big picture. But tell us about just most common mistakes that you see. I think that would be good for our listeners to hear, just so that they can just think through them and obviously do a self-evaluation, and then we'll wrap up from there.
Sure. The most common mistakes that I see is hurrying through the inspection, not filling the form out correctly, not understanding, exactly the structure of the home. Before you start the inspection, you got to step back and look at the house and say, is it a supported slab? Is it up on piers? What is this going to take for me to do an adequate inspection? That type of self-analysis is really critical. And I think that's the point. But before, I know we're going to try to get to closing here, but I want to share with you, a lot of times when I get into these cases, I always ask the technician, what happened? Why do you feel like you're not responsible? And I gave a quick list here and what some of their excuses are. I'd like to just share it with you real quick.
Mm-hmm.
Some of when I asked the technician, I said, well, why did you do an inadequate inspection? And some of the responses I get are, well, I only got paid $35. Well, that's the John Arbuckle defense. You get what you pay for, right? That's not enough damage to report. Well, any damage that's wood destroying has to be reported. Anyone could have seen that damage. Well, no, that's your job to put it on the form. It doesn't matter what anybody else would have seen. It's what you saw. Mm-hmm. The realtor told me to fill it out that way. Well, that's not much of a defense. It's that's trying to hang the realtor, and the realtor is going to deny it. Right. And a lot of times when you have to re-inspect, they don't inspect the entire home. If you're going to do a re-inspection, let's say that you saw problems with the home and then they say, well, I fixed it. Well, don't go back and just inspect that area. You've got to go back and re-inspect the whole house, because a 13645 inspection is a snapshot in time. Right? This is what I saw at that time. Now you come back 2 weeks later and now there may be, exit holes that weren't there during your first inspection. So you've got to do that. And talking about exit holes, that's an excuse I've seen before. How do I know the difference between an exit hole and a nail hole? I got the funniest one I think I ever saw was there was a big technician, and this was a house that was up on 3 levels of block, and the bottom area of the exterior on the siding was completely, if you looked under it, you could see that it was completely damaged. And I asked him, I said, well, why didn't you see this? And he goes, well, I had to bend down to see that. And I said, well, that's your job. He goes, and then he looked at me, he goes, well, what do you want me to do? He says, you want me to go get one of them mirrors like them perverts at Kmart use to look under skirts? And I mean, this is what I'm being told by these people. I mean, I'm going, And again, there's bait stations around the. He didn't list the bait stations. I said, well, why didn't you list the bait stations? He goes, well, I don't know if there's bait or sticks in them. He says, so I don't want to make that judgment. I'm like, okay, it's a system around the house. Put it there, you know.
Wow.
The other thing too is I had a guy that was out in Volusia County that was doing a church, and he did the inspection with a almost a pen light, and I'm like, you're standing in this big open void. I said, you missed all this damage. He goes, well, would you expect me to get a bigger flashlight? Yes, I expected you to get a bigger flashlight.
Right.
So I mean, these are some of the comments that I get from these folks, and some of them are like, I shake my head and I'm like, you shouldn't be doing this. But those are some of the crazy things that have happened, at least things I've had to deal with over the last 28 years.
Anything else that, you know, as far as most common, I mean, anything else you want to, before we finish out here? Because I think, you know, obviously technicians, you know, obviously there's no alibi, right? I mean, at the end of the day, you have to do the inspection. You got to do it right way. And there is no excuse, right? I mean, it just, I shouldn't say there's no, but it's just like it has to be something that you physically cannot see. And it's a good point that you made about them understanding the structure. We had several times where it looked like a home was like a split level and it was on a slab, and it was not. It was actually a crawl space, and the crawl space was accessible from inside the house. And so it would not get, you know, it would be easy to miss it because they didn't like, oh yeah, it's a slab. It's like, no, actually it's not. If you go inside the house, you'll find like a little opening. And I don't know if you guys ever seen these on split levels, but we have a lot of them here in North Carolina, and it's really easy to do because you think, oh, it's a slab, and it's not. So anything else, like as far as most common mistakes?
Well, but again, going back to the training real quick, I mean, if you don't feel like you can give your technicians adequate quantity, there are programs out there that you can send your technicians to. For example, PMU at the University of Florida has a great program. It's a week-long program where they're learning identity of the insects, how to do the inspection. They've got a house out there that they've designed to teach your folks, you know, what to look for and how to do that. So there are training modes available that a company can utilize if you don't feel like you can do it well enough yourself.
Right.
You should utilize those.
Yeah. All right, Dan, anything else you want to add here before we finish out?
No, I think that's it. I think that this has been fairly comprehensive, and really appreciate your time. And Mark, is there any want to do a selfless plug for your practice? I use Mark extensively for M&A, and I thought that this was really interesting stuff. If people want to get a hold of you, how do they do it?
Well, they can reach out to my law firm. It's a law firm of Mark H. Ruff, PA, and I'm located in Longwood, Florida. And if you want to give me a call, you can reach me at 407-951-6679.
Look, the phones are ringing already.
They're already ringing off the hooks.
All righty. With that,
Good deal.
if you enjoyed this episode or any episodes, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or Apple, Spotify, however it is. And a reminder, all the resources and show notes are available on pmpindustryinsider.com. And with that, we're going to sign off. We'll see you all next time. Take care.